Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Viraj Rabadia and today I am going to present a webinar on development of testing kits and global diagnostic methodologies for COVID-19. This presentation will be under the webinar series offered by Atmiya University, Rajkot, India. Today, around 70% of global population is under some sort of lockdown, and in last 90 days, hundreds of webinars are presented on development of therapeutics, drugs, and vaccines for COVID-19. One area is a bit less covered is the development of testing kits and future diagnostic methodologies for COVID-19. So I hope today's presentation will be relevant for the researchers at institutions such as Atmiya University and research teams seeking to develop kits and contribute in the research for this particular pandemic. So in this presentation, I am going to cover what are the test kits and technologies are under development, what are approved, what are in the pipeline, and what future projects at Atmiya University researcher can join them and contribute to development of novel kits for COVID-19. So, what is COVID-19 and what is the pathogen? Coronavirus disease of 2019 is abbreviated as COVID-19. It is a complex respiratory disease caused by novel coronavirus known as SARS-CoV-2. This disease initially was thought to be a pneumonia and only a respiratory disease, but as the day progresses, the disease actually start to get more complex than the initial definition provided by WHO. SARS-CoV-2 is a member of coronavirus family, including common cold, flu, severe acute respiratory syndrome, which is abbreviated as SARS and which occurred in 2002, as well as the other family member which you are aware is called Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, also known as MERS. Now, SARS-CoV-2 was initially reported in Wuhan, China in November 2019, and COVID-19 soon quickly became global pandemic, and today it is reported in 192 countries. After infection, around 18 to 80% people remains asymptomatic. Now, the symptoms for this disease as day progresses getting more and more complex, which involves respiratory distress, fever, tiredness, dry cough, sore throat, and nasal congestion. Now, disease was initially focusing more on the pharynx as well as the lungs, but as the disease gets more severe, the virus actually spreads from lungs, and pathology basically transients into circulatory systems and moves to other organs such as heart, liver, kidney, and brain as well. This disease is deadly, and especially for people who are 60 to 70 years or older and people with compromised immune system. Patients usually have 90% of them may have mild symptoms, but unfortunately 2 to 3% gets critical symptoms, and the death rate for this disease is around 17%, but it varies from country to country and population to population. So the range for the death rate is 5 to 28%. Now we know that this pandemic in today's transport-friendly world is one of the fastest growing pandemic in recorded history because we use aircrafts. So this disease compared to the historical disease spread in almost every country of the world within 90 days. The pandemic is still growing. Every day the world sees extra 80,000 new cases. People's life and global economy is impacted. As you can see, India's unemployment rate in April 2020 shot up to 24%. Similarly, in United States, around 35 million people lost their jobs. And same thing is true for Canada. As of today, we have 4.5 million active cases and around 299,000 deaths. Luckily, around 7.5 million people are already recovered and around 1.7 million people have active COVID-19. In terms of economics, since January, the stock market lost around 14% of value, and which basically translate into drop in around 4.8 to 5% global GDP. Now, ADB Bank actually estimates the global economic loss because of this disease would be around $2 to $4 trillion. So what it means? It means that most of the countries with advanced economy will have negative GDP in this year, except China and India. They will be in proximity of 1% GDP. IMF estimates that in 2021, most countries, they will bounce back in terms of GDP. So today we are sitting in our home and attending this webinar, and same thing situation actually is in close to 192 countries facing this COVID-19 pandemic. Now on your right side you can see use J-shaped curve for the daily confirmed cases which is reported for United States. Because right now the United States is the real hotspot in terms of global cases reported. This graph actually shows somewhat flat lines for Spain, Italy, UK, Germany, Russia, Canada and India. But if I zoom this y-axis, as you can see, there is a stabilizing trend for countries like Spain and Italy, but alarmingly the trend for Russia, Brazil, as well as the lower line India is now increasing after May 1st. Now this disease was originated in Wuhan, China. As an original strain, they call it strain A, which basically mutated into strain B, which is more or less genome-wise similar to strain A, but more pathogenic. So strain B actually started this COVID-19 impact in Wuhan, China. And from strain B, the another slight variant mutation was strain C, which people believe is less pathogenic, which spread to the other countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, and Italy. So as of May 8th, around 2400 sequences for the SARS-CoV-2 genome was submitted. Around 200 mutants were reported, and around 1800 unique variants of SARS-CoV-2 were reported at NCBI. Now, in terms of testing and importance of testing is very relevant to mitigating the COVID-19 pandemic. So here this graph shows that if the pandemic is not mitigated or no intervention, it can grow to a drastic bell-shaped curve and can have higher the peak, and number of patients cannot be accommodated in existing hospitals. So if pandemic is basically contained by lockdowns and mitigations, you can see a less aggressive graph of the spread of pandemic. So testing and containment actually decreases the heighten of the peak and initially relieves the pressure from the hospital, but at the end of the day, the mitigated pandemic have less number of cases and less number of deaths, as you can see here. Now, spread of COVID-19 is basically estimated by number of cases at 1 million test mark. So after the 1 million test, you can see how many cases were reported in Spain, USA, UK, Italy, France, and you can see India. So it looks like the degree of number of cases in first million tests was lower in India, which shows basically less degree of spread. Similarly, number of cases per million, India is showing the lowest number compared to Spain, where highest number of per million people were infected as of May 4th. Now, number of cases in India actually are going to rise after May 1st, because now India ramped up their testing. So the key word here is testing is very important in containing this virus, and timely lockdown in India actually provided critical time for getting ready, finding the kits and personal protective equipments, making hospitals ready, and preparing the health system for the pandemic. So actually this may keep overall impact low for India as compared to the other countries like USA and France. Now, the structure of SARS-CoV-2 is presented in many webinars, so I will be quick. So on your left, this particular scanning electron micrograph image is showing these blue dots is basically SARS-CoV-2 in human lung tissue. Now in the center you have a nice colorful cartoon showing coronavirus with spike protein, which sounds like a crown of a king, and that's why this family is known as coronavirus family. On your left, you see the beautiful section of coronavirus showing the viral genome, which is RNA, and you can see the nice spike proteins here. The other protein includes nuclear proteins, the membrane proteins, as well as envelope proteins. So SARS-CoV-2 is more stable on plastic and metal surfaces and other surfaces, and that's why it enables more spread for this particular disease. SARS-CoV-2 actually binds with ACE2 receptor and which allows the entry of this virus inside the cells. Now, being a positive strand RNA virus, this virus actually replicates faster in the host cell cytosol, making it more virulent. These molecular features such as RNA sequence, M proteins, N proteins, spike proteins, and envelope proteins are targeted to design diagnostic kits. So understanding the mutation in this particular sequences is very important for designing the kits. Now this particular disease has a shorter incubation period. So on your left side you can see the comparison of incubation period for SARS-CoV-2 compared to SARS, MERS, swine flu and seasonal flu. Now these are the 5 researchers. Actually they presented a variety of shortest to longer incubation period, and what we need to know is which is very variable from country to country, from 0.5 day to 24 days, but generally it is 2 to 14 days. Now this shorter incubation period actually requires to provide rapid test results, and that's why turnaround time, which is also known as TAT, is very important in terms of mitigating the viral spread. So the TAT was initially around 3 to 5 days, which was not acceptable, but because of the development, current TAT is around 1 to 2 hours. Now, in terms of discovery for the developing test kits as well as the therapeutics, a lot of research papers have been published for SARS-CoV-2, as you can see in the graph in your left side. And number of patents, including vaccines, antibodies, cytokines, and RNA, are registered. Now, as you can see and compare the patent reported for SARS as well as MERS, specifically you look at patents for diagnostic related, growing quickly. So whatever learning we had from the diagnostic test from the earlier SARS in 2002 and MERS in 2009 is very helpful. Hundreds of databases are at work, including Chemical Association, Society of America, CAS, PubChem, NIH, and EU databases. More than 200 companies, academia, and R&D labs are actually working around the clock in 35 countries to develop test kits and therapeutics. COVID-19 related knowledge actually doubles every 14 days on the internet. Now this is the basically a genomic analysis of SARS-CoV-2 genome, which is basically around 300 base pair long. These are the variety of sequences and assigned proteins such as antagonizing interferons, proteases, polymerases, and other interferons. Now, in terms of making kits, people target a variety of either sections of SARS-CoV-2 genome, which is its RNA, or SARS-CoV-2 proteins as antigens such as viral RNA, S protein or E protein or other proteins. Now, one of the things which we need to know is in terms of infection and pathogenesis, SARS-CoV-2 enters in the cells via the spike protein locking in with ACE2 receptor and enters inside the cells via endocytosis. Now SARS-CoV-2 is similar to SARS-CoV-1 as well as MERS-CoV. So learning from SARS of 2002 and MERS 2009 is readily utilized. And as you can see, the SARS-CoV-2 bat coronavirus and SARS-CoV-1 have very similar genomic sequence, almost 96% similarity. So utilizing this structure and our experience with coronavirus genomes in last 20 years, the research for the test kit as well as the therapeutics was very fast in last 2 to 3 months. The crystal structure for SARS-CoV-2 was done by Gao et al., which was published in Science in just 5 working days. The lock-in binding of SARS-CoV-2 spike protein with ACE2 receptor mechanism as well as the cell culture experiment was done in just 2 months. And basically it provided us a variety of targets on which we can develop kits such as spike proteins or the other proteins, as well as some of the very specific sections of SARS-CoV-2 genome. Now, basically this has accelerated global efforts for developing COVID-19 test kits. Today, more than 100 global companies and actually scientists have detailed molecular targets for SARS-CoV-2 and variety of approaches for developing the kits. Rapid response and R&D teams of the SA scientists at Oxford, University of Toronto, University of Guelph, at Loss, Thermo, IDT, and variety of other companies collaborated to develop COVID-19 kits in the shortest possible period. Biological and computational modeling were used to create a blueprint of molecular targets for making test kits for COVID-19. So main 3 approaches for developing kits are RT-PCR based test or viral antigen based test and SARS-CoV-2 specific antibody created in human based test. Now these are the companies involved in basically these 3 approaches. So while a large number of COVID-19 kits today focuses on anti-SARS-CoV-2 antibodies and antigen-based approaches, the simplest and emergency approach is targeting the viral RNA sequence by qPCR or LAMP-PCR will basically define the quickness of the response of the scientific community for testing. Now this particular RT-PCR approach is going through refinement in next 3 to 5 months for effective testing. Now the workflow for the current testing approach is as of March and April this year is basically you have the patient in clinics, you take either swab from the esophagus or the buccal cavity, ship the sample to testing facility and then run basically RT-PCR. So these are the standardized qPCR primers for SARS-CoV-2. So learning from earlier SARS and MERS disease was very helpful in terms of annotation of genome for SARS-CoV-2 and developing the PCR based test. Now PCR based test is followed by variety of versions. So as you can see on your left side, this is a small sample of more than 80 groups. So more than 250 kits are under development at phase 1. Around 50 already entered into phase 2 of clinical testing, and around 10 new kits are in the phase 3 of clinical testing. So the progress is good, but unfortunately only 5% of the test kits are under development basically comes into the diagnostic market as a standardized and approved test kits. Now, design of test kits need to be basically need to factor in actually types of variants. So when you design the primer or you design the antibodies, you have to make sure that particularly for which population and which strain of coronavirus you are aiming for. So as today, we have 3 to 4 main strains reported, and number of new strains actually changes as we speak. So report on the mutants and new coronavirus strains are published, and around 14 strains are characterized. So that will help to develop more efficient specific kits for COVID-19. Now, the sensitivity and specificity of the any kit can define effectiveness and accuracy. So today's, RT-PCR based qPCR tests are considered gold standard, and which are basically 80 to 90% sensitive for the SARS-CoV-2 genes. Now, how it actually helps clinician to define the probability. Now, considering the pandemic, we are in middle of the pandemic, the probability for having the positive case by clinician is around 70 to 80%. So how this testing will help increase test probability, that basically a clinician thinks that a patient has a COVID-19 based on their clinical assessment. So if the assessment says that, okay, I have 90% think that this person will have positive for COVID-19 pathology, but if test kit say it's 75% efficient, the probability an error in the probability will be around 8%, which is good. But if the sensitivity is less than 80%, the error increases for the probability group from 15 to 18%. Now you think about the antibody test kit initially shipped by China to a variety of countries, and when they rejected because the false positive false negative actually rate was around 50%, and the probability rate for negative was more than 45%, which was unacceptable. So such point of care immunodiagnostic test for COVID-19, WHO has provided some guideline on April 8th. Now these are the simplest test kit which are based on the viral RNA or proteins for respiratory samples such as sputum or throat swabs, or detection of antibodies generated in human blood in response to the infection. Now, the rapid diagnostic kits based on the antigen detection are having only 30 to 80% accuracy, and the test kits again in rapid category based on host antibody detection. Now, antibody production in human blood is dependent on the response of immune response in particular individual, and this immune response actually depends on the age, nutrition, health status of the person, and medication. The sensitivity of this kit is also not very good, and that's why at present WHO recommends that both antibody or antigen based test kits should be used only for research and not for the clinical testing yet. So as of today, we have only molecular test which is approved by FDA, EU, and globally various regulatory and clinical agencies to do RT-PCR based or any PCR based COVID-19 cases. Now the issue with rapid test, as I mentioned in earlier slide, that one of the study recently published says that only 20 to 29% immunological test uh, provide accuracy, and that depends actually on the day of collection of the blood. So after the infection, the antibody production takes between 4 to 14 days. So it is critical that the sample collected on a particular day may not have accurate antibodies, and that's why these kits as of today have very low the accuracy rate, and hence these kits are still under development. Now, if you see the development pipelines, it's a huge table where test kit development are basically done on variety of fronts, and here is the list of global front runners. Huffman La Roche, which has RT-PCR based test kit, and the company is already shipping their test kits to more than 80 countries. Thermo Fisher and QIAGEN and other companies, they also have a shorter version of RT-PCR test kits. They are also currently shipping the kits worldwide. Mammoth Biosciences as well as Sherlock Biosciences have test kits based on CRISPR assisted editing. So it is quite a bit shorter incubation time as compared to RT-PCR, where they need between 1 to 2 hours of incubation, and reporting still requires 3 to 5 hours, and country where the reporting system is slow may take a day. Now this particular kit from Mammoth actually provides result in less than 20 minutes, and company is planning to provide kits in June. Similarly, Cepheid has actually received FDA approval in May 21st, and their kit actually operates on any machines on Cepheid platforms, and Cepheid actually has their automated GeneXpert system around 23,000 globally, and out of that actually more than 10,000 operates only in United States. The other front runners are Abbott, University of Guelph in Canada, the Hybrid Global Diagnostic in Italy, McMaster University in Canada, and here are their basically timelines to either go into clinical testing or start making production for the kids. Again, the different type, the second type is detection of viral antigens. There are few companies, namely the Genomic Research Center and Academics in Taiwan, as well as Sona Nanotech in Canada, and Health Life Sciences in Canada. Now, since this depends on the either antigen means viral RNA or viral protein itself. Now, detection of this kind of antigen is very difficult by the kids for two reasons, because the concentration may vary. But if it becomes more sensitive, this can become in future a potential very accurate kits. Now, the another possible kits which can depend on the detection of human antibodies against the viral proteins. Acegene, Diagnostic Biochem, Pharmaset, these are the companies involved in the development, and these are their timelines. Now testing is luckily picking up in variety of countries. So this is the testing done so far, number of tests done per million population as of May 7, 2020. So total test performed versus test performed per million people. So luckily India is catching up in number of tests, but since India has 1.4 billion population, the test performed per million people is still low, around 925 tests per million population. So in terms of testing and mitigating and controlling the disease, it is worth mentioning that South Korea, Vietnam, Singapore, Australia and New Zealand, they are good example of managing the pandemic via testing, mitigation and disciplined public support. In terms of fundings and resources for kits and vaccines, as of May 5th, a variety of countries have actually pleaded millions and millions of dollars. Canada actually pleaded around 850 million just for the global pandemic support for 2020. So as of May 5th, more than $8 billion fund is available in international response funds in Europe. America is still not actually sold on location tracking devices considering breach of uh, privacy. So now we are here. Where we gonna go from here? How we will reopen? What will be the reopening strategy? So disease is everywhere. The red mark actually shows that America is current hotspot and Europe, and it is actually luckily less in India and China today. So there can be three scenarios. The one that okay, if we are lucky enough, we receive the peak in May, June, and then it stabilizes, which is the best scenario. Another possibility that the COVID-19 can jump uh, in October and November period where we see other flu symptoms. And in bad case scenario where COVID-19 can have this wavy outbreaks and occurrences over next 2 to 3 years, if that is the case, it will be very difficult and testing would be very, very important. So initially the hotspot was in Wuhan, which moved to Milan and Europe and spread in other part of the world. So if you were to do just testing and open the country based on the immunity passport, alone in the United States, they need to perform 11 million tests per day to cover all 335 million population, which is not practical. So just testing will not help to contain the pandemic, but actually discipline, human behavior, sanitization, and combination of surveillance and healthcare support may basically help control. So this is basically a model where different tier of healthcare systems are working to mitigate the disease today and in next 5 to 7 months. Now vaccination and community mitigation uh, is also can be achieved by herd immunity. Now the concept of herd immunity is not new. It was tried in earlier pandemics, and how this concept works is you need to have a minimum number of population either immunized by vaccine or by immunized by getting some sort of mild infection. So if nobody is immunized, only few people are immunized, and if you allow disease to spread, it can spread to 90% of the population. But if you either have vaccination or if you have close to 80%, 60 to 80% people basically become immune, and if you have one or two people, the disease cannot spread any further. So the concept of herd immunity cannot be used as standalone, but it can be used with the combination of a variety of factors such as the community mitigation, vaccination programs, interventions means lockdowns and slight release of the lockdown and secondary lockdown, as well as people's behavior in terms of keeping them protected and using other existing medications. So in G8 countries, generally the herd immunity may be attained by combination of vaccination and social distancing controls. In populated countries like India, Mexico, Indonesia, and China, where people seem to have slightly higher immunity and hence such population can be more amenable to concept of herd immunity with assistance of immunization in parallel. Around 65 to 80% population need to have some sort of immunity, which scientists predict that probably can happen in next 18 months. So next 15 to 18 months will be very critical. People believe that first set of vaccine may arrive by December, and 100 companies are actually working day and night to develop COVID-19 tests and vaccines, but we have to accept the fact that many of them unfortunately may not work. Luckily, we have many drugs in the pipeline and vaccines are under development. Uh, Typically, there are some existing drugs which can be used for the direct interventions, such as the drug called remdesivir, some of the immunomodulators which basically modulate inflammation can be used, or some indirect agents such as antiviral drugs or hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine, which are under clinical trials. So current vaccines or mRNA and DNA dependent approaches are also underway. So on your right side, there are promising therapeutics in development, and some of them are luckily in phase 3, and which may come in next 5 months. But vaccine probably take around 8 to 10 months to arrive. It is expected that some drugs will basically help intermittently before the vaccine arrives. Now, first generation of vaccine from the Oxford and Serum Institute of India, Moderna, Codagenix, CanSino, Pfizer, Sanofi, GSK, etc. may arrive in next 10 to 13 months. Now, the good side of this whole pandemic is if you compare the COVID-19 pandemic, of course it will look bigger compared to 2002 SARS or 2009 MERS. As of May 13th, around 2096, around 296,000 deaths reported, which seems bigger than the recent uh, pandemics. But if you want to put things in perspective, since 1981 and as of today, around 25 to 35 million people were died just because of AIDS and HIV and in modern pandemic history. So just to sum up that it's all not bad and there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. So if you compare the top 10 global pandemics which basically killed more than 10 million people, the Black Death in 13th century, it actually unfortunately killed around 200 million people, and at that time global population was around 4 or 5 million. So roughly at that time around 49% of global population was wiped out. Similarly, for the smallpox in 15th century, took away around 12% global population. So you compare this with COVID-19. As of today, we have around 0.297 million people uh, basically diminished, and percent-wise is still 0.04% of global population. So I think we are lucky because today we have better technology, advanced science, advanced IT, and artificial intelligence based approaches to mitigate the pandemic. And that's why by 2020, people estimate that around 1 million to maximum 5 million people can die in next 5 years, but still it will be, less than what we see in terms of global population impact. So what we are seeing in next 11 months is going to be testing, testing, and testing, and physical distancing. So these are the just picture for your reference. In Ottawa, Canada, people are lined up for COVID-19 testing. Here you can see the people lined up for COVID-19 sampling in front of a kiosk in Agartala, India. Here is the picture of a professional taking drive-in sampling in United States. Now, testing as well as the physical distancing will be very important, and this is the very good example of physical distancing where insurance planners are giving exams in Seoul in South Korea. Such a nice example of social distancing. In future, we will have second generation kits which will be very reliable and will look like this, like a pregnancy test, which we have available today, but they are less than 40% accurate. But hope that in next 10 months, people will develop this kind of kits where universities and academia can support the R&D process and push this particular development faster. So we'll have the testing kits probably available to test at home by October 2020, and if we are lucky enough, we will have some sort of vaccine available by December 2020. So for the institution like Atmiya University, it will be very important and beneficial to focus on COVID-19 kit development as compared to getting involved in large projects like vaccine development. So in terms of future projects for universities and colleges, the fundings can be available by Bill Gates Foundation, NIH, Health Canada, CRISPR, Department of Biotechnology, CSIR, etc. The Foundation for Innovative New Diagnostic FIND, which is a Geneva-based organization which supports the development and delivery of diagnostics, and basically to aid the large-scale efforts by inviting assay development and to submit the new products by independent investigators. So they have already received around 222 submissions, and basically qualifying the inventors and innovators will be contacted by them by end of the May. In Finland, a similar sourcing body which can provide the fund, they did some research and they found that using artificial intelligence and real-time epidemiological surveillance can provide, better outcome. And Finland has a very good example of this. In India, CSIR and IGIB, they partner with Tata Sons to provide one of the first prototype of the kit, which is called as Faluda, which is basically the FNCA S9 editor linked uniform detection assay technology, which basically utilizes the cutting edge CRISPR technology to deliver this particular results based on a cellulose paper based strip, which can give the visual readout in less than 20 minutes. And they said that the test will be affordable than current RT-PCR based test, which costs around 4,500 rupees in India. WHO and variety of government bodies in G8 countries as well as in India actually invites a lot of researchers to provide their proposals. So for Atmiya University, they can easily available grants from CSIR, DBT, and other national bodies as well as NIH, FIND, and Bill Gates Foundation, and that kind of international bodies. In terms of COVID-19 test kits, future R&D objectives, in my knowledge, it will be in 3 phases. In phase 1, people need to discover and optimize current kits, which is basically involving selection strategies, optimization of reagents, testing kit and assay component optimization, maximizing the test performance and consistency of the test, and basically bringing overall TAT down. In phase 2, basically miniaturization of current testing strategies as well as enabling the automation and increasing the efficiencies will be the goal, which will involve basically development of and validation of antibody-based rapid test as well as antigen-based kits, and which may involve a lot of projects including improving accuracy, precision, reproducibility, and reliability in high throughput formats. The phase 3 of research actually would involve in future where you have next generation kits, which will involve a lot of antigen based test kits, may make more efficient test kit and more economic, more affordable kits, and more better apps and surveillance systems which can be supported by artificial intelligence as well as enhance AI consciousness. Now, so what is the path forward? The path forward from here is human learning and discipline of human R&D for the kits as well as vaccines will tell us where we are heading from here. So in phase 1, we are currently in the struggling phase, and we have to still remember that strict social distancing is the norm. In phase 2, in July to December, which will be a stabilization phase where stepwise reopening will happen in every countries, and new kit in terms of PCR, LAMP technology, global standardization of those technologies, and testing will enter into phase 2 and 3 for clinical trials. Vaccine will be available, lot of new kits will be available, and at the time probably vaccination will start for doctors and healthcare professionals before it goes to masses. So social distances will become habit, but that still will require physical distancing in offices, schools and colleges. Phase 3, which can happen in December to next full year, which will be a recovery phase where our economy, tourism, industries, airports, entertainment, games, so-called IPLs, etc. will start picking up. But in terms of projects for Corona and COVID-19 testing, automation, high throughput, artificial intelligence, sterilization technology such as far UV 222 nanometers. That kind of technologies will start getting installation at airports and at schools to keep the sterilization while the immunization is going on. And this will be the phase for the mass immunization, but still mindfulness for social distancing, and the stadiums and theaters will have far UV systems to mitigate. So to recap, what we discussed today under this webinar is uh, COVID-19, its origin, its pathogenesis, and its pattern of spreading as a pandemic in the worldwide scale. We also discussed the nature of symptoms and pathophysiology. We discussed the groundwork and how the genomics help in R&D for test kits development. We also discuss the variety of elements for diagnostic development and marketing, including the RT-PCR, fast PCR, LAMP technology, as well as rapid testing technology. We also discuss what is the current status of discovery and development of kits, as well as development of vaccines and drugs. So during this lockdown period, hopefully we improve our sanitization and safe physical distancing habits, and there is a hope that in next 8 to 15 months we will be out of this pandemic. Thank you so much for your attention, and many thanks to Atmiya University for inviting me for this webinar. If you have any question, please send them to Dr. Karthik Ladva at Atmiya University, and I will return my response to him promptly. Thank you everyone, and have a great day.